where they're forgetting that in the 80s and somewhat in the 90s, because horror kind of fell on its ass in the 90s, horror that was rated R was still big box office stuff. People still ran out to see it. Friday the 13th, Jason Goes to Hell. I shudder every time I say that because first you had a Friday the 13th with no blood, then you had a Friday the 13th with no Jason. So, and the question I'm coming up with is, as a filmmaker, and I bring this up because of one filmmaker in specific, if the MPAA gave you a rating that you didn't feel was fair, would you lobby and fight it, or would you just say, okay, I'm going to cut it?
Well, I think it depends on if it's an independent film or if it's a studio film. If I was in the studio system, I don't have a whole hell of a lot of say about it, unfortunately. If it wasn't, well, they're corporations at the end of the day, these studios, with publicly traded stocks, and they have to answer to the Christian right and all these people. So if the risk isn't worth it for them, they're going to fold, unfortunately. You get somebody like Quentin Tarantino or Rob Zombie behind it, and then it's a different issue. But would I lobby it? I think it depends on my goal. Thankfully, now that Jack Valente is out of the MPAA, they're kind of starting to make a little more sense with their ratings. So people like Kevin Smith who say fuck too many times aren't edited. It's R. It's restricted to 17 and above. Don't go if you're not 17 and above. So,
and Kevin is actually the reason I posed this question to you, because he should get an award for it, I think, because Kevin's one of my favorite directors, but he's the only director to have lobbied and fought the MPAA 3 times and gotten 3 wins.
Right. And he's Kevin Smith, so he can kind of do that,
And he's also why I said, well, when you said in the studio system, I said, well, that's not necessarily true, because all 3 of his films were studio films.
That's true. No, that is true. The rating system is so silly. The only reason you have to really have a rating is so you can advertise publicly, because newspapers won't advertise anything that's NC-17 or unrated. So that's where you're screwed, and you have to, and it's like $10,000 for them to watch your film and give you a rating. So it's, it's a necessary evil, I guess.
I was talking with Marcus Cook last week, and they had gotten an NC-17, and he didn't fight it. He ended up just cutting and cutting and cutting until he got it down, and then said, hell with it, I'm just going to release it unrated. Which I guess is one of the advantages of indie.
So many people want the unrated anyways, I don't want a rated film. I want to see what the director's vision was. And then you have somebody like Trey Parker and Matt Stone, and I don't know how true this story is, but I heard that when they tried to do Bigger, Longer, Uncut, the South Park movie, that the MPA kept trying to give them NC-17, so they put more shit in it. They just kept putting more shit in it until they got an R rating. So if that's true, that's brilliant.
That actually sounds like a better idea. And as a filmmaker, how do you envision it playing out? Do you think that fans, and naturally because of the advertising, do you think that fans would shun a movie that was unrated, or do you think they'd just flock a little more because they're finally getting something they've never really been allowed to have, except on DVD?
I think fans need to understand what unrated and what R means. And I think that's the problem, is that they don't understand the politics behind these stupid rating systems. And I think, again, it's very hard. I'm kind of confused by the horror, quote-unquote, fans out there that are kind of surfacing, because some of them don't consider my film a horror film because it's not chock full of violence the whole time and just silly, stupid blood and gore. So I don't know. I don't know if they'd flock to it or not. Some people have been pissed off that my movie was unrated because they were expecting this gore fest. Most people don't really care. So I don't know. I don't know that I have an answer to that question.
Based on your last comment here, do you think that, and I have a strong opinion on this, the wording is eluding me, and it's weird because I'm not drinking this week, and I usually do drink while I'm doing the show. Do you think that perhaps the torture porn films have kind of spoiled and ruined what people consider horror these days?
Without a doubt. They have fucked us all. Yes, without a doubt.
I missed that. I was going to blame one man in specific, and I just completely lost my train of thought there. Aha, there we go. This is why I sit in front of my computer. Eli Roth, fuck you.
Oh, Eli Roth.
Not him as a person, but I think by and large, Eli Roth and the little Asian guy, I can't remember his name, who did the original Saw and Dead Silence.
Right.
I'm typing.
Yeah, I could have.
Because James Wan. So Eli Roth and James Wan have ruined horror for, and I think, the true fans. There was something I was going to ask you. You've I don't want to say paraded. You've shopped the Nobody Loves Alice around on the horror convention circuit at this point. Have you been getting a lot of, and not just fan feedback, but have you been getting a lot of returns on that when you have fans sending you messages on MySpace, Facebook, saying, I picked it up at this convention or that convention and met you, and wow, this was a great film, or what have they been saying?
Well, I've gotten a lot of support again. The Di over at horrornews.net has been an incredible supporter and fan. She loved it. Isabella De Morte at Horror 101, not Horror 101, I'm sorry, Microshock. People like that have really come out of the woodwork to support my film and help promote it. And I haven't got any real hate mail, any people upset about the film. And very few people, I know the film's not perfect. I made it in 12 days, and I was 23, and there's room for improvement, but I get very little negative critique at all.
So you don't have the net nerds, and this is one I like to ask people, you don't have the net nerds out there slamming it and throwing their fits? And
I do. If you Google Nobody Loves Alice, which, of course, being a media whore, I want to know what people are saying. It was really detrimental to me looking at, if you go to the message boards on IMDb, there's some douchebag that said something like, nobody loves this movie. And there's just this thread of negative stuff that really messed me up for a little while. But then I realized I've got 30 great reviews from people that actually know what they're talking about and not some angry kid in his basement that doesn't really know anything about horror. So I have got a lot of slander. If you go, I think there's torrent sites out there that you really can't do anything about because